Okay, I think just about getting set up. Let's have a look. So it looks like YouTube and Twitch are working. Okay. So I haven't done this in a little while. Last year I worked on this project for a little bit. So if you're interested in React Native or TypeScript or just React in general and debugging, there's a tool written by Infinite Red, which is a React Native specialist based out in America, and also, but it's mainly contributed to by a guy called Rich, who I met at the last Chain React conference. Anyway, I figured I'm a bit bored, so I'll do a bit of a stream just working on some open source for a bit. I haven't worked, like I said, I haven't worked on this for a year, so I'm going to need to, since December, so I'm going to need to get everything set up and stuff again. But I suppose if you've got any questions about setting up an environment for working on React or React Native, feel free to ask in the chat. I am trying to monitor both Twitch and YouTube, so if you're on one or the other, I'll try and keep across it. Otherwise, feel free to ask any questions if you've got any about what we're doing. I think the plan will be, I spotted an issue in the backlog, which was, where are we? This one, support for React hooks. So right now, Reactotron supports monitoring Redux state, MobX state, and a few other things. I don't know how far we'll get with looking into this, but it is kind of a cool idea if you could just have some sort of observable or something that would then let you watch state on a class as well. So that's the plan anyway. So yeah, if you've got any questions, just give us a shout. Otherwise, I'm just going to crack on. Alright, let's have a look. So first things first, gonna have to clone the project again. I do actually have a local copy, but it's got some other stuff that I've been tinkering with that I don't want to fart on with, so let's just do a new one. Let's have a look, see what else is floating around. There's a whole load of Renovate bot stuff, which if you're not sure what Renovate does, it automatically creates pull requests with updates from npm, which is quite nice. It looks like they're doing some Electron update work, which is interesting. I don't even know if the demo, there's some samples in here for the React client, and I'm not even sure if the sample code has React hooks in it, come to think of it. Probably not. We'd actually have to use it. I suppose it might be easier just to create a really simple project in React and then just tinker with that. what issue was that actually? Let's link this to the issue. So if you don't know what React hooks are, basically for years now React had state where you had a class and you had state and you had props, and so props you would pass into your class, and that would like set up the class, and props don't change unless you effectively pass a new set of props to a component, at which point the component will do a full re-render. State on the other hand is kind of internal to a component, and so you've got kind of this sort of semi-permanent data and this transient data that updates, and when one or the other updates, that triggers a re-render of a React component. Now historically that's been inside of a component itself, but React itself actually supports an entirely functional based way of writing, as opposed to wrapping up in components. They added this. When was React hooks support added? It was only last year, but it is something the React team. So it was a 16.8. But it was something that the React team are planning to use throughout. They're also adding this to React Native. If it isn't there already, I haven't tried using this in React Native. I've done quite a bit in React Native, but I've never tried using hooks before. So certainly something to say. But starting with 16.8, React includes stable hooks for DOM test server. To enable hooks, all React packages must be 16.8 or higher. Do I need to rewrite my classes? So they're not removing it, but it's certainly something that you can use. The biggest advantage of hooks, for those who don't know what's the reason for using hooks, is that they kind of work a bit like mix-ins. So you can mix in state behavior into a component. You could argue that's a bad thing, but if we have a look at a quick example, here's a really. So this is what you used to write. Let's start here, right? So if you know React, this is probably what you're familiar with. You have a class that extends React.component. You got a constructor, same as any class. It takes some props. You call super on the props, just good behavior, and then you can have some state. And so this state is kept entirely within this component. But when the values within state change, so if count changed its value, that would trigger a new render pass. And so everything would update in front of the user. Now, what the problem with this is I can't share the behavior that might be encapsulated by state here. So let's say I wanted to write a counter and have that counter be across a whole load of different components for whatever reason. Right now, the only way you could really achieve that is by having a very dedicated component and then using higher order components, which, if you know what, let's dig up that really quickly. Higher order component. You could decorate your component with that functionality. So I won't go into higher order components because they kind of falls out the scope of what this is. But effectively, you could decorate your components with a counter component, and that would then allow you to add counting functionality. But it's a bit of a long-winded way of adding functionality to a component is using higher order components. So if we come back to the original example, that's what it looks like right now if you want state. But what you can do in React is have what are called functional components. So they're not classes in the traditional sense. It's a function which returns what would be the response from the render method. So if you look at the render method here, effectively the return of that is exactly the same. Forgetting about these bits here, which we'll come back to in a minute. And so historically this stuff was great if especially if you were writing like mostly presentational components. So if your components just rendered some HTML, functional components were great. You could take a component as an argument or as a prop, and jobs are good. But what they didn't have support for historically was state. So functional components was mainly done mainly for prop based output. Now React hooks added the ability to have a method of managing state inside of a functional component. So if we look here, there's a use state function that's taken from the React core library, and you declare a new state variable. Just so you call use state. In this case, there's a 0 here, which is effectively the initial value, and then you pull out two properties from it. So count and set count. So if you've got count here, and this would be set state with count. So you can think of, if I want to now change the value of count, which is in this constant here, I can go set count, take the previous value and add 1 to it. What that will do is this function will do some stuff inside of React and tell this whole function that it needs to re-render, it needs to re-return. And effectively count will now have its increased value, and you've done that without needing all of the extra boilerplate of a class. But more importantly, because this is functional, because this exists, this doesn't have any sort of properties, as in it's not on an object scope or anything like that. You can share this behavior. This behavior could be copied and pasted quite easily across a whole load of different places, and again, without going too far into it, there's ways and strategies of sharing code, functions. So you could do like functions that return functions, in other words function currying, and those curried functions could add all sorts of behavior very simply just using this, without really caring about how it's rendered or how the update behavior works. If you're interested in hooks, I definitely suggest reading the React docs. The React docs are actually some of the best online documentation I've worked with, so just a random point there. It's well worth looking into. And actually, I'm inclined to just take this really simple example of a very simple component that just adds 1 and has a counter, just to see what we can generate with Reactotron. So let's check out our new feature branch. And so we're going to need to get up and running, so we need a code. Let's have a look, see if the readme's up to date. God, it's been a while since I've worked with this. I'm sure they migrated it all to Yarn and everything's in here now. That's the core for the project. Used to be there was a contributing, but okay. I don't know if that. My gut says it's probably not this simple, but you never know. Let's give it a try. So you never need to write yarn install if you're just for what it's worth. If you're new to yarn, you don't actually need to write yarn install at all. If you just write yarn, the default op for yarn is just to install. So we'll see what this is doing now. Last year we worked on a fork of Reactotron that was never released. But what it was planned to do was instead of it being an Electron app, it was actually going to be a React web app. Sadly, it never saw the light of day, but one of the things we did take advantage of was Yarn workspaces, which if you're not sure what those are, definitely recommend you go and look into Yarn workspaces if you've got like sort of multiple projects working together. There's a NPM package that used to do it, and for the life of me I can't remember the name of it, but definitely if you're working with multiple workspaces or multiple environments nested together, Yarn workspaces of it is quite cool. This actually looks like it might be up to date. Oh, there we go. So, let me just bring this on screen, because you won't be able to see this. Oh, why is there a bug? I can't. Here's an odd bug. I can't drag the window across. What is going on there? I wonder if there's like a shortcut or something. Oh, there we go, got it. That was weird. That was a weird bug. Couldn't get the Reactotron debugger across. Right, so there's Reactotron. Right now it's not connected to anything. If we have a look, no connections, nothing in the timeline, and there's nothing to see down there. So the reason for that is there's no React project to connect it to. So what we'll do to start with is we'll just throw together a really quick React project that Reactotron can hook onto, and we'll see if we can jerry-rig something together. So let's just duck out of here so we've got something nice and separate. If you've got any questions, if you're watching, just drop a message in and I'll try my best to get back to you. I'm trying to keep an eye across both YouTube and Twitch, so if you do have any questions, just give us a shout. Right, I don't actually know if I've got Create React app on here. So these days, I think you install Create React app using npx. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, so npx is a kind of like a batch binary installer. It's pretty cool. It does a whole load of different stuff, but for the speed, we'll just assume it comes with Node, so you don't need to install it separately. So but this should get us a nice and up-to-date version of a React app up and running really quickly. Oh, I didn't know you could do that with Yarn. That's so this is me learning. I did not know you could use Yarn Create. That's interesting. Anyway, so this is going to create a whole load of stuff for us. This is probably going to have generated a package lock as opposed to... Oh no, it didn't. Hang on, is this... Yeah, it has. Oh no, it's created a Yarn lock file, which is good, which is what we want. The only downside is this is one directory down from what I wanted it to be. So let's just okay, let's add that to our editor. So let's just kill this for the minute because we don't need it. We're just going to work on quickly throwing together a React app that demonstrates Reactix for the minute. So what you'll see, what's being created here, there's a whole load of different stuff that just comes out of the box for free, and it's really easy to get up and running. So you can just yarn and yarn start, and that should put everything that we need ready and allow us to get going. And we should end up in the browser, there we go, with just a, if it's the same as the old one, just a really dummy little page with the spinner. There we are. So that's Create React app. Nice way to get the framework for React in there really quickly if you just want to mess about with a React project. And this will live reload. So if, for example, we tinker with app.js here, and let's just do test. If we save that, this should automatically refresh, which it has, and now you can see the word test. Anyway, that's kind of bog standard React stuff. But what you'll notice is Create React app used to create a component, like a full component for this that was a class. It used to extend if we look back at the documentation really quickly, it used to create one of these, so a class that extended React component. But now they don't do that, which is really interesting. They just bundle a function. So actually making this example should be really easy. So let's just for the minute ditch this stuff. Let's ditch that for the minute. Let's borrow use state. From React. And just to save some time, in fact, let's pinch this code. I don't know how this will render in here, but we can sort that out in a minute. How's it got a formatter? Right, what we could do with here is just a formatter. So we'll sort of formatter because this looks awful. So if you've never used a JavaScript formatter before, Prettier is your friend. It will sort this horrendous mess into some nicely formatted code. So let's add it, seeing as we're here. I always forget what the deal is with this, but it does. You can see it's got formatting rules for a whole load of stuff. What's really interesting is third parties have added extensions for languages that aren't even JavaScript now. So it's really nice to work with and use in your editor. And as with most things now in Node, there's a yarn script for it, which is really nice. So let's just quickly dump this in. So that'll add it to dev dependencies rather than your full dependencies, because it is just a development dependency, right? We don't need this in our final version. It's just a tool to help us format. So if we're in luck, VS Code will detect that we've actually got a formatter in here now. And if we do format document, no, maybe we need to do something. Normally it picks that up. I'm just wondering if, oh, we haven't got a prettier config file in the project. That's why I'm being an idiot. Okay, so you need to add a config file into the project. So it's just .prettyrrc is the file you need. Configuration file. Here we go. And that there's loads of different standard configs that you can provide in there. That isn't the one that we want though. We want a bit of a more modern one. I wonder if Reactotron has one, come to think of it. Let's have a look. It does. So that'll do. Trailing comma ES5. Ugh. Okay, well we'll add that for now. So if we just do that and dump that in, close that, see if this works. I don't know why it's not loading the config from the project. It's normally enough just to get it going. Well, oh, see this? Oh, yeah. See, this should be fixed now. So there's something weird going on here. Why is that not working? I wonder if I need to reload VS Code. Let's try that just in case that's a problem. That's not going to work. Let's try that one more time. Alright, well, it did sort of work, but see if we indent this over here, it's fixed that, but for some reason it thinks that the button doesn't want to format that. I wonder if we need a, do we need a JSX extension for Prettier? I don't think so. Let's Google it. This is just, yeah, I don't think we need anything specific for JSX. It should just normally work. Okay. Well, for now, it's better than it was. I don't know why it doesn't want to sort it out properly, but trust me, you can make it work nicely. So I would definitely recommend. Wow, we're off to a good start here. That's because we've missed copying this bit. There we go. There's really nothing to this, but we're now tracking state just using this here. So it's a really, really simple example of React hooks. And I mean, if you compare just lines of code to achieve the same thing really quickly, it's definitely just a little bit less boilerplate, and you get the ability to share and reuse code across a whole load of different places. So that's React hooks, if you weren't aware. So let's add Reactotron to this project, because that's the whole point of the stuff that we're actually doing here. So what we need to do is add Reactotron, but we don't want to do it from npm, we want to use our locally built version, I think. So this is where I'm now going to have to do some exploring to figure out how to work with the project to connect up locally. So let's see what the docs say. I'm just going to grab a drink of water. If anyone has any questions, feel free to give me a shout in chat. I've got one eye over chat, so if you do have any questions about anything I'm showing you, just drop me a message and I'll try my best to get back to you with an answer. Right, let's have a look. So we've got the app running. How do we hook this in when we're not using? Maybe we don't need to. Maybe it's just as simple as this. Screw it. Let's try the default instructions, because it might just be as simple as that. So let's just jump back in here. Kill this really quickly. Yarn add Reactotron React.js, and again, this is a dev dependency. We don't need this in production, but let's add it to dev for now. So that's added Reactotron, which means this is now a real object. So in theory, if everything's right, that's all we should need to get up and running. So let's just yarn dev here, yarn start here, and yarn. Okay. Not really sure what's going on there. What's going on? Oh, it's yarn dev, not yarn start for this. This is yarn start. Okay, so our app's running. Just kill this for a minute. And in 2 seconds, this should open up Reactotron as an Electron app, which it has, but again, let's put it on a different window, which is annoying. Give me a second. I'll see if I can fix this. I don't know why it does this. Yeah, I don't know why it's doing this. Just doesn't let me drag it over. Give me a second, I will get it sorted, because I did this before. There we go. I genuinely have no idea why it won't let me drag that over. But anyway, so my hope is that I can just go reload here. Voila, it's connected. And we've got connection. And if you keep reloading, so I know this by itself isn't very useful. It's just telling us that the app's connected. So if you've never used Reactotron before, you can get some really quick wins on your project, because Reactotron has a whole load of different plugins to do different things. So let's just dive back to their documentation really quickly. You can look at your state. So if you're using Redux, MobX, or whatever, install a plugin for it, which they provide, and you can honestly, in one line of code, be able to see what's going on with your state and watch for changes. If you have a quick look at the at this here, this animated GIF, this is changes in state going on here, but you can actually also trigger changes in state. You can trigger, for example, you can dispatch Redux events directly from the app, which is really nice. What a lot of people, and certainly what I tend to use it for, is error logging. So if we just quickly jump to the quick start for React.js, we've effectively done this little bit here. But what you can do... Oh, we've got a dog coming in. Hello, missus. Shadow's come to say hello. Right, so and if you wanted to, you can just create log statements with this. So this is a really useless thing to do, but it will illustrate a point. So if we do that, there you go. And anytime we repaint now, we'll get a debug statement. So there you go, there you go, there you go. You see? So anytime render would be called, or because this is a functional component, effectively anytime the function re-renders, we get a nice little debug statement. So you can think of that as console.log, but this actually takes, this will take an object, so we can pass in a key value, which we'll just throw together really quickly. And this includes nested objects with functions inside them. You can do all sorts of stuff with it. So there you go, and it does a nice little key value mapping for you. Anyway, what you can't do right now, what isn't possible with this, is seeing what the value of count is here without explicitly doing the following. So what we could do, if you really wanted to, is write something like this. Let's use... Okay. And so now every time we re-render, the count will update. But I had to write this in, which is really frustrating because we could have a plugin, or the whole goal for the ticket that we're looking at, if we bring back up the ticket that we were wanting to work on, is to not have to do that, to just be able to add a plugin and maybe declare a class or something that would let us do this. So if we, where's that ticket gone? Here we go. So what the discussion going on in this GitHub issue is, vphonic would effectively like a way of being able to see changes in his state, so changes in this case in count, without having to effectively write reactotron.log for each value or whatever. In an ideal world, it would be great if you could just put in a plugin here, something like State Watcher or something, and that alone would let you to watch state in some way. Now, how we'd get to that, I'm not really sure. I think what would be nice would be a way to just, I think, we need to find a way to see what hooks are being recorded in state, and I honestly don't know what that would look like right now. We'd have to, what could we do here? Let's have a look. So we could overwrite the useState function from React. That would be one option. So really simply, a way to do this would be, I'll do it in this project first, and then we'll come back. So let's say we had a new file in here, and let's call it Reactotron State Watcher .js. And what this is going to do is, instead of using useState from here, let's just borrow that declaration. So what we're going to do is let's have a look at the declaration for use state. So use state takes an initial state or an optional, that's a function, and returns a state, a set of states. So for now, in order to achieve this, what we're gonna shortcut this a little bit just to get running. So let's go initial state, and then go. Why does it not like that? Has it already been declared? Because okay. So what we need to do is go do that, and then do sadly that's just a limitation of the way JavaScript imports work. I don't think there is a way of getting around that, unfortunately. It still doesn't like this export. We need const. There is a way to do this, and for the life of me I can't remember. For the minute, okay, let's just use useStateWrapper. So we've got export const useStateWrapper takes initial state. And what we're going to do is basically just have our own method of observing change in here. The nice thing is we could actually use well, for the minute, let's just console.log let response equal use state initial state. So what we're going to do, we're going to pass forward on what's passed into us onto the use state, and we need to return that response to the caller, right? So we need to return that response back to app.js. So, but what we can do now, in the meanwhile, because we actually know that what we're going to do really quickly to begin with is if we import Reactotron in here, we could do, let's just for the speed, now the way this works is it's always at the first key. So you always get back, when you call use state, 2 parameters, and the first one, the first index is always the value of the state, and you're effectively declaring what that's called. But in here we can just reactotron.log response 0. So this is a first proof of concept. So what we could do to make this interesting is just move this into here, so that we don't even need to declare it in here. And instead what we'll do is import use state from it's useStateWrapper, isn't it? Reactotron state watcher. So if this works, it hasn't, and that's because we're using use state watcher. We'll just change that really quickly. So now if you see in the debug over the side here, in theory if we press this, there we go. Now if we can just change it so that the export from in here is called use state, which I know is possible, then effectively we've just engineered a way of hijacking state management from React, direct from React, so that we can watch it. Because what we could do now in here is, as a plugin, instead of just calling Reactotron log and doing what's in here, we could forward these messages directly to Reactotron. And so what we've got right now, oh, I've just realized I'm hiding away from the camera. Hopefully this will sort itself out in a second. There we go. So what we've got now is like a nice little client-side way of doing this, but obviously the downside is what we're having to do is change use state. That is what React normally uses, and declare our own. It would be nice if we didn't have to do that, and I reckon we could get away with it by using some fancy function currying. So let's see if we can do this using what am I doing? That's not right. So, because what we could do potentially is decorate use state, and instead use, how could we do this? There's definitely a way to do this. I just need to think of how we might do it. Because really, if we go back to what we want to write, that's what we want to write, right? And somehow we want to write import use state wrapper. That would be fine, and then just call something like yeah, what we really want to write is something like, and this won't work, but let's say that, and then have that. I don't think this would work though. The reason I say that what we need to respond with here is a function. So sorry, I know I keep moving out of the window of the screen, which is probably quite annoying. Just when I'm focused, I'm trying to think of how we can achieve something. So use state is a function, and we need to effectively return it, but what we need to do is do some extra work with it. So we want to say that we know that when you call it, it takes an initial state, and it returns an array with 2 keys, right? That's effectively what it looks like. I'm just wondering how we could do some fancy stuff here to call that function. We could and I'm sure we could do this using function currying. I'm nearly certain. I'm just trying to think how we could achieve what we want. Oh. I've got some bots in the chat. This actually reminds me I should probably check YouTube just to see if there's anything in there. Nope. Okay. Let's see. How could we achieve what we want? Now, I think that's all Linter trying to be smart, but I'm doing some funky stuff here, so I think if we do this, it won't. Oh, maybe it will. Well, we'll see what happens. So React hook use state remapped is called in function state watcher, which is neither a React function component or a React hook function. How does it know that that's a React hook? I'm genuinely interested to know how it knows that. How does it know that? Fascinating. I genuinely don't know how it knows that. So what it's saying is use state remapped is called in function state watcher, which is neither a React function component or a React hook function. So it knows that this isn't a React hook, though how it knows that I have no idea. I mean, I'm genuinely impressed, actually. But there must be a way. There must be a way to tweak, sort of fake it into thinking it's the right thing. There has to be a way to do this. Let's think. How does it know that React hook use state remapped is called in function state watcher, which is neither a React function component or a custom React hook function. Alright, let's do that. Identify use state wrapper. Probably isn't going to let me do that, is it? Attempted import error. Use state wrapper is not exported. Because it can't be. Okay, React hook is used. It still knows. It still knows. I still haven't managed to fake it into realizing. How does it know that? How does it know that? I wonder if I export default here. I don't know how it knows this. I'm genuinely impressed. This is like, what's different about that? And yet somehow it knows. React is fascinating. Like, we might not get this working, although logically it should, but I'm genuinely curious as to how it knows. I'm trying to fake it using style, but it's clearly not reading the style. It's obviously because I'm not returning a render function. So, how does this React hook use state remapped is called in a function state watcher, which is neither a React functional component or a custom React hook function. I wonder, the fact that the second thing sounds kind of interesting. So this, I know this is part of the rules of React hooks there, and there's some other stuff which is quite interesting. What we're looking for though, there's more to this than the last time I used it, mind, I have to say. Use imperative handle. Fancy. Anyway, this is that bit's to the side for now. Yeah, how does it know? It must be because I'm not returning a render function. But I don't know how it knows use state remapped. Is it like this could literally be anything? Why is it? How does it know that this is a state? How does it know that that is a state thing? Like, if I write FN there, okay, so it must just recognize the words use state. Let's just get rid of that because it's not actually a component. Cannot access uninitialized variable. Cannot access uninitialized variable. What happens if we just... I'm just going to comment this out really quickly. Right. Just for speed, let's do this. Bring up the debugger. Excuse me. It's a function. Yeah, I mean, you can see that this is pretty much, as a declaration, essentially what's going on here. Yeah. And yet, if we do that, it just won't have it. Not access uninitialized variable. What happens if we do that? That's interesting. I think this might actually be working. So if we do, just hit close there. There you go. So if you look in the log now, let's just change this because it's not a component. It's because we're declaring this as something else. I wonder if we could find a way of renaming. If we could find a way of renaming that export, we'd be in for a winner here. Because that's what we would love to write. And then just call well, actually, technically we're not exporting use state, are we? Are we? No, we are exporting use state. But because we've declared it there, but I think actually it makes more sense to do this because we don't want to confuse what use state is. Like, what we want is to be able to write use state here, use state here, and everything would be fine. But I don't think you can. I don't think JavaScript supports renaming an imported function. Maybe it does. Oh, you can, as alias apparently. So that is a cheeky way to do it. That is a cheeky way to do it. Because you can do that. So we've got it to one line now, because you could effectively use state wrapper, and anytime you declared use state now, you would track it, and we're getting the events from inside the code there. So we've got an initial solution, because after this, what we could do now is if we wanted this to be a nice little plugin for Reactotron, we could just wrap this little bit of functionality up into a plugin and pass it into configure here. And you could just call use state wrapper, and actually we don't even need, the truth is we don't even need to do this if we're really smart about it, because actually what we could just do is do that. We still need the alias. But we could then use React hooks here and not even take the function as a parameter. But I think it makes more sense to do it like this. This is one of those things where there's different ways of achieving what you want, but it depends on your design goals. I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be back in 2 seconds. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, now the problem with this is that everywhere we want to use this, we're going to have to write that first line, which is frustrating because you don't have to do that with Redux. So it would be great if we could just have the one line. And we could do that. We could have it so it was just one line by doing, instead of importing use state from there, import use state from there, and instead having but because it's now not a component, we actually can't do that, which is really interesting. I suppose the alternative is to suggest, no, we can't do that. Yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to get any better than what we've had. which isn't great really. And it's a fair point to say we're not even using React in here, so we could actually just drop that import altogether. I mean, that does achieve what we want. The only problem is that if we wanted to not use Reactotron here, we'd have to comment that out, and comment that out, and comment that out. Which is, it seems like it's overkill really. So I wonder if there isn't a better way to achieve what we're after. I don't know why Node modules felt the need to expand that. I suppose one thing we could do is do this. That would be a minor optimization, because then it would cover all of the components that are inside of this class. And that way our functions stay pure. And instead, the only corruption in the project is effectively this. So you add those two lines in, and you now get tracking on state. Although you do still need to declare this. I'm assuming if we were to just leave it like this, it wouldn't work. Oh, maybe it will. Oh, it will. Wow, okay. No, that didn't work. I was going to say for a little while it did actually seem like it would. Identifier use state has already been declared. What about... I assume this won't work. What about that? Can't find variable use state. And if we declare it as a const, I doubt it'll work, yeah. Identifier has already been declared. Yeah, I didn't think that would work. I don't think you can get around that either. And I don't think you can override an import on JavaScript. Yeah, I don't think that's going to do it. So we're effectively back to kill this. That'll work. It means that every time you want to use state, you're going to have to do this, which is just a bit of a shame really, because it goes against the principles of plugins, but I can't think of another way of getting around that. Might be time to call it a night anyway. What time have we got? 9:30. Does anyone have any questions before I wrap things up? I haven't really put anything together other than messed about with use state, but that's coding in a lot of cases. Wish I could get this working. There has to be a way to do this. He says. I mean, this isn't bad because at least you declare it once and all of the files, all of the code inside uses it. And you could wrap that up into a dev flag, although you can't, I don't think there's such a thing as a dynamic import. So this would always have to be there. Yeah, I can't think of a better way of achieving that. Yeah. One of those things, I think. It was worth a try though, to see if we could come up with anything. But I think without having to write that, if we could just use this, it would be great. But it's not gonna let me. Not gonna let us. Just because that's what most people will write. And you don't want... The nice thing is you can just immediately remove that when you're ready not to do production code. I wonder if there's a different way that we can solve this problem. I think this is probably the best that we can come up with. Which is a shame, really. I was hoping to achieve a bit more than that, but I don't think it's going to be possible. Yeah, I think we can't do any better than that, I'm afraid. Haven't unfortunately been able to solve that problem. I mean, this is a semi way of doing it through overriding, but and it's not the end of the world if you have to do this. It's just unfortunately you have to write. The bit that really bugs me is this. But without that, it won't work. I mean, all of the components that you put in here would be fine, but you'd have to. Yeah, I don't know how else you could achieve what's asked of from that ticket. Now the question is there anything useful enough in here that we could pass this to the guy? I mean, I suppose we could link him the video, couldn't we, and just say, look, we had a mess around with this. If you're interested, here's a video, but it's probably not what you're after. I suppose that's something, right? It was worth an experiment. And if we got nowhere with it, well, that's just learning. So I guess if you're the guy who asked this question, if you're vphonic, I suppose we'll leave a comment and just reference what we've done, and if he's interested, he can always play with it a bit further or whatever. The nice thing is you don't actually need to write a Reactotron plugin for that, I suppose. So we didn't actually do any Reactotron development today, so sorry about that. Although you might have learned something, I don't know. I'm about to wrap up now, so if there's any questions before I go, give me a shout. Any questions? I'm going to sign off at 21:52, so 3 minutes for questions if there are any, and then I'm going to shut down the stream. We'll write this guy a message whilst I'm waiting for any questions. Well, we might as well push this. So we've done something. It's not really useful, but Let's just edit that README. Because it's good to clean up the project if, just in case somebody else does want to have a look. Alright, I'm sure nobody will actually look at this, but at least now if that guy does want to have a look, there's an explanation there. Let's see if we can get a, does this have, can you get a direct link to this? What's that going to be? No, that's a link to the path. We could just do that. Alright, there's been no questions, so I'm going to call it there and just post this comment out, and if anyone's interested, there you go. Thanks a lot.